Hey there, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, Recover Ed, Recovered Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening.
Hi, podcast listeners. This is Stephanie Crawford, recovered alcoholic and staff member at the Magdalen House. And today I am interviewing Floyd for our series, Hope for the Family. And so Floyd is going to introduce himself to you all, and then we will get into his story. Floyd?
Well, my name's Floyd Ross, and I'm a grateful member of the Magdalen Family Support Group, and a very grateful member of Al-Anon and AA.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think the first thing that we want to do is to get to know you. I think it always helps the listeners to get to know the person we're interviewing. So if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of background for us to get to know you and qualify you as an Al-Anon.
Awesome. Well, let's see. I was raised up in a little East Texas town, Palestine and Fairfield, and I come from my grandfather had 9 brothers and 3 sisters. I was raised up in a dry goods store, and that little old dry goods store was pretty much a focal point for the family. So I'm really fortunate that I get to know my 6th, 7th, and 8th lineage cousins. I'm very active in family history, and my mom and dad loved us bunches. They both passed on to glory, and because of the fellowship, the restitution was made. They wanted me around. My mom got to live with us before she passed. Pancreatic cancer just a couple of years ago, and my dad passed from bone cancer about 10 years ago, and wanted me there. And it's a great benefit of this program that relationships get restored. So many different things. But getting back to early on, I remember as a child, my aunt tells a story of the headboard in her guest room has teeth marks in it because I didn't get my way. My mom would tell a story about the 4th grade principal called her at home and said, you really have to come down here and see what your son is doing in class. And what I was doing was raising my hand up and saying, hey, teacher, hey, trying to get her attention. It seems like I've always wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And that's not a really positive character trait in me that I've come to find out about through working the Slow 12-step program. My mother and dad got divorced when I was 13. My grandfather passed away when I was 12, and I remember my mom coming to me and saying, you really don't have time to be crying. You're the man of the house. And it was a really short period of time between the age of 12 and 14 that I took my first drink, and I found my first girlfriend, and I had a hardship license when I was 14. And, being raised up in that dry goods store, working was just a part of living. We worked 7 days a week from about 4:30 to 10 o'clock at night, keeping that little store going. At 15, I was doing all the wrong things, waking up in places with people that I swore I'd never be with, doing things I swore I'd never do. My uncle was a full-blown alcoholic when he got back from Vietnam. My family, we took care of him. When he would get drunk and get thrown in jail, well, we'd go get him. And when he married his wife, I was the chauffeur. So I learned at a really young age to help, and I didn't know that the help that I gave wasn't helpful. I just didn't know. You didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I have come to find out in the years of being in the program that alcoholism affects 3 generations forward and 3 generations back. It will affect 3 generations forward if gone untreated. And that's both for the Al-Anon and the alcoholic. I'm so very grateful that our son today, I called my wife Buttercup, and her real name is Carolyn. But I called her that because my sponsor told me a long time ago I couldn't call her what I used to call her. And they weren't very nice, 4-letter and 5-letter words. So Buttercup it is, because I was told to pick some nice names. And I've got some other ones for her. Love Muffin and Sugar Lips and a whole passel full of them that I get to call her today. And that's only because this little old way of living works for me. A judge looked at me when I was 16 and told me that I couldn't do what I was doing in the Tri-County area. And the first thought in my mind was that I needed to move. And I found out in the fellowship that, the normal person says they need to straighten up. And that's not what I said. I said I needed to move. I needed a geographical cure. So I did that. I moved up to Dallas and through a series of events. And I met a little lady out of the pool one day. And she was drinking a 6-pack of Mickey's Big Mouth with style. And I was drinking a Crown and Coke at the time. And we started off into a relationship that was 5 years of just absolutely trying to kill each other. We wound up in places doing things that we didn't want to do, in places that we didn't want to be. And another geographical cure series of events happened, and we wound up in a dry county. And I knew that would maybe make things better, but it didn't make anything better. And then it was jump forward a couple more years. It was a treatment center. My wife had called me at work one day and said that she was going to do something really bad to herself. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and told her, well, you just go ahead and do that thing. I didn't know that my boss was behind me, and he suggested that I go home and see what was going on. And through a series of events that day, God works in mysterious ways. I saw a billboard of a doctor's name that I had looked at the year before. And I drive the same route to work every day. And, that billboard had been up there 2 years before that day. But it might as well have been a neon sign that day. A little receptionist gave me a solution. Ellis County helped out, and my wife wound up in treatment. And I wound up at a family day at a treatment center. And the counselor was talking about how you either had to be here for yourself or your significant other, but you couldn't be there for both. So out of a room of about 40 people, I was the lame duck that raised their hand up in the air and said, I beg to differ with you. And that led to a discussion out in the hall. And he asked me one simple question: would I do anything in the world to help my wife? And I told him, yes, I would. He said, won't you take your ass to an Al-Anon meeting? That pissed me off so bad that I knocked down 15 doors and found an Al-Anon meeting at the Preston group that evening. And they were talking about a solution being in the book, and I really didn't want to hear it from them. So I did what I do. I got one of their books and thought that I could figure this thing out on my own. And I couldn't. That led me to the Waxahachie AA group. That little AA group loved me unconditionally. They told me things like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought I knew something about alcoholism. I found out that I knew very little. I didn't know that the alcoholic is a sick person. I thought it had something to do with if they loved me more, they wouldn't do that. It just didn't click. I didn't understand that the advice that I was giving was hurting. The solutions that I was trying to get her to follow weren't helping. They weren't helping me, and they weren't helping her. They were actually contributing to alcoholism. They were pushing it forward instead of relying and trusting upon this God of my understanding.
Do you mind sharing what some of those things were, just in case somebody is listening who's maybe doing some of those same things?
Oh, well, let's see. Well, one of them that went over about like a rock off a cliff was well, just wait and drink with me when I get home. Let's see. One was when we were up in Dallas. I'm sure that Buttercup wouldn't mind me sharing, but I don't know if you're supposed to. You're supposed to trust one another in a marriage. And I found out that I couldn't trust her with the car, so I put a kill switch in it. That didn't help out anything. What's another one? Sicking the police officer on her didn't help out all that much. She came in the house one day, had blood running down her head, and had a wreck down the street, and had just decided to walk away from the scene. The officer came over to the house once they found out what was going on, and had a talk with her. But that was somewhat of a consequence. And I've come to find out that an alcoholic has to suffer the consequences. But there is an appropriate way of doing that. Stepping back, being loving, tolerant, and kind are the things that I practice today. Learning how to let her be responsible for her and her own actions is something that has been really, really hard to do. We have been, by the grace of God and this fellowship that works, this little old Design for Living, we've been blessed with 30 years of marriage this year. Well, I find that, it's the people around you that tell you your truth. And one of the things for Buttercup and I was that we were told that we compensate each other really well. Where she might be weak in some area, I might be a little stronger. Or where I'm weak in an area, she's stronger. So we complement each other very well. I know that some of the things that I would do revolved in and around control a whole lot, and but over the years in the program, those things have gotten better. Some of the ways that I would control would be to manage the credit cards or manage the money or say you can do this and you can't do that. And all of those things didn't help. I've made many, 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 many mistakes. But because I believe that my higher power really loves what a friend of mine in the family support group calls an alononic. For 25 years, I've never heard that word. I believe that my higher power also loves an alcoholic. And he'll put people in my life if I'll be willing to open up my eyes and see them. Be willing to set my pride and vanity aside to listen to someone else. Listen to their pains and their hardships and find this freedom that passes all understanding.
Yeah. So congratulations, by the way, on 30 years of marriage. That's amazing. And it's hard to imagine the two of you at one time wanting to kill each other because you guys are so cute now. But
the big book calls them workouts. That these things are called workouts. Of course, that was before the big book in the program. This last time that she had a relapse, that was a little harder. It was a little harder on myself and my son. More so for our son than for myself.
Yeah, can you talk about that, like being on the other side of having a son in an alcoholic home?
And I remember. So I'm going to briefly say that I was sober, working with a sponsor, working the steps, carrying the message. from March 30th of 96 through July 3rd of 2016. And on July 4th, I rounded the corner of a camper. Buttercup had already gone back out, and I had no mental defense against the drink. The next day, I was okay, but our son was not. That night, I remember him being at the camper, and he was like, "Dad, what's going on? You guys don't drink. Why are y'all doing this?" And I didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer that night. I did not have an answer. And it was just another short 30 days before Denton was asking questions like, "Dad, we've got to do something." And I would tell him, "Denton, we didn't cause it. We can't control it, and we can't cure it." I remember sitting on his couch. I stayed out from July the 4th until February the 1st. I called my sponsor on the last day of January of 2017 and told him I needed to pick up a chip. And he said, "When are you going to go to the meeting?" And I said, "Tomorrow morning." And that was all he said. He said, "I'll be there." I picked up that chip and we walked out of the back of the AA building there on John Arden. And he said, "Well, you know what to do, now get at it." That meant that I was going to start working with him on a daily basis and trusting God, cleaning house and working with others. And my son, we were sitting on the couch right around within that week. He looked at me and he said, Dad, you hadn't been there for me. You and Mom have not been there." And Buttercup was still out. She was having a hard time finding her way back. He'd say, "We've got to do something." And I picked up a Alateen book, but he never had the desire to want to read it. And the family afterwards book talks into the wives, talks about leaving literature sitting around. So I'd set the big books out in the house and Buttercup would put them up. And then I'd set the books back out. Then sponsees started coming over to the house. And my mom was there. My mom was there at the house, and she was fighting cancer. So God put other things in our life that we could do to work with others. Because that's the driver in Al-Anon, is to carry this message to others. So I'm so very grateful that we had that year there with my mom. We talked a lot of God. Our son, because of the program, he picked up some things that we do in the fellowship, and he also picked up other things that we do in the fellowship from church. And now he kind of does them because that's just his way. I'm so very grateful that he hadn't had to become a member of either side yet, but he knows where they are and he has friends in both fellowships. So, to your specific question of, what was that like? It was hard. It was really hard. An alcoholic in the grips of their alcoholism is not a pleasant person. And to practice love, tolerance, kindness, detachment from the disease, love the person. You don't have to love the alcoholism, but you can love the person, because in the doctor's opinion, it tells me right off the bat that the alcoholic is not a bad person, they're a sick person. And they, we have an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body. My body can't properly absorb it. My mind damn sure can't handle it. So, and the only thing that's going to help me is this. When this spiritual malady is overcome, I'm going to straighten out mentally and physically. So that's really the gift of the program. It's almost like as soon as Denton started seeing Buttercup staying sober a day at a time, he was like, wow, mom's back. And then he would say, oops, something's wrong. Something's wrong today. And we would talk about, it's okay to have feelings, and it's okay to talk about feelings. And, maybe we can give mom the same respect, that it's okay for her to have her feelings, even though we don't like them. So we started practicing some of the things that it talks about into the wives. Whenever something would happen that we really didn't agree with, like a slip or something, we would talk about how this is a sick person. This is a really sick person. But I eventually had to do the one thing that I swore I'd never do, and that was to make a decision to leave the house. That was the single hardest thing I've ever done in sobriety or in Al-Anon, either one. When Buttercup volunteers at Maggie's house and overnights there, I miss her. I miss her when I go to sleep at night. I missed her when she was drinking because we had so many years of good sobriety. But alcoholism is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It takes what it takes. And I can recover from alcoholism, but I'm never cured. I'm only cured by maintaining the spiritual connection. And I get to know that today and get to respect that place where Buttercup's at. And to some extent, because we practice this way of living, our son practices it almost unknowingly, where he can just allow us to be whatever we are. And as a buddy of mine would always say, in all my warts and halos. See, I judged and wound up being judged. Guilt through shame, I tried to control others, and I didn't know that was the bondage that was keeping me in the disease. In Al-Anon, that it was that if I would just simply take the step, I would get the result. If I would just take the first step and stop trying to control and manage, I would be amazed. I would be amazed what would happen. And I continue to be amazed today because I continue to do those same things. I hope that somewhat answered that question.
No, there's a lot of good stuff that was said just now. I was thinking, you talked about the mistakes you made thinking that you were helping your wife. What if there's a husband on here listening being like, well, then what am I supposed to do? What does helping an alcoholic wife look like in a healthy way?
So I know that, and we'll step forward to just this last relapse for Buttercup. The hardest, what that looked like for me was that I was in Al-Anon, and I was also in AA. So I've got a sponsor that's also Al-Anon and AA, and he attends both meetings as well. And he's got a sponsor that attends both meetings as well. Now, but she is a she, but she is loud and proud, as loud as Lisa could ever be, or Buttercup, either one of them. So, my sponsor would always tell me, Floyd, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. So trusting is not necessarily doing the same thing over and over and over, always expecting it to be different, yet it was always the same. And I say it like that to say that, when I would get home and I could tell that Buttercup was drinking, I did not go around the house and start looking for the bottles or jump down her throat and say, you've been drinking today. Why are you drinking today? Because why she drinks is none of my business. It's not any of my business. How it affects me is my business. If I am restless, irritable, and discontent because she's doing something that I don't want her to do, where is freedom and joy and happiness? It was a hard lesson for me to learn that I could give her the respect and dignity whether she was drinking or not. Now, I can't tell you that I've done it gracefully. I can't tell you that I've done it perfectly, but I've done it better than I did 25 years ago. You know, I stopped pouring out the liquor 20 years ago. This time, I get a tickle out. I get a tickle out of alcoholics because we do the same shit over and over and over. We use the same hiding places. You know, we think we're so sneaky. And Buttercup would always think she was so sneaky, and she'd always hide them. So I would take them whenever I was cleaning, not when I was actively looking. I would take them and I'd just put them on the bed so that when she woke up the next morning, she would see her empty bottles. Because I know that it was nothing worse for me to find them empty in the garage when I was trying to stay sober. Empty bottle for me was just as bad as any trigger. It was hard for me to learn that she needed to drink all she could drink, as much as she could drink, to get to that gift of desperation. Gift of desperation. G-O-D. I didn't know that. I didn't know that when I came in. I didn't know that there was a creative intelligence in this universe that underlined the whole totality of things. I didn't know that could be God. I thought that it had to be that little Baptist church back home. And I came to find out that, no, that's religion. And spirituality is my conversation that I'm going to have with God. So, like I said, I can say that I didn't do it perfectly. What I would say, you know, when I was afraid for her, when I knew that she was out on a big binge, I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of talking with my sponsor. My sponsor and I prayed together until the time came when I was told that she's being irrational and she's drinking and driving and putting our family at risk, because everything's joint, right? Everything's joint, and Buttercup and I both have a friend that got charged with involuntary manslaughter through being drunk. And we know how it affected the family. So I had to, because my sponsor and I thank God, like I said, I think God loves an old drunk, and he'll put people in your life that'll tell you the things that you need to hear when you need to hear them. It was more than a few people that were saying, no, take her keys away. Take her keys away. So I had to learn how to take her keys away. I had to learn how to check in with some friends and say, you know, I don't know where she's at, but if she's doing what I know that she's doing and you see her, you do what you feel like you need to do to protect yourself. Buttercup and I, we live out loud a lot. You know, there's few people that don't know some simple things about us. You know, we own a business here in Waxahachie, so employees knew what was going on, and they would call, and I had to learn how to tell them, you do what you feel like you need to do. If Buttercup is that irrational today, You do what you have to do. Everybody, it seemed, were asking me, Floyd, you have to do something. And I would tell them the same thing that I knew. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it.
Are you or someone you love struggling with the inability to stop drinking? At the Magdalen House, we believe that alcoholism education and recovery is crucial to helping more alcoholic women and their families recover. Our staff is available to provide speakers to the public who will discuss the disease of alcoholism, how to help someone who may be struggling, and more available resources. To request a speaker, please visit our website, magdalenhouse.org/education.
But there were times that I did things that I knew that I should not do. And one of those things where I got a call after I had moved out of the house, and I only took my backpack, his clothes, because I love Buttercup with all my heart, and I wasn't going to take anything. I figure we started this thing with nothing, and if I was going to have to leave, I'm going to leave with nothing. It's still hard for me to think about that day. But a friend of mine called from the police department and said, "Hey, you have a couple other friends down here at the police department, and they know the situation that you're in, and you and your wife are in. They knew that if she got one more ticket, she was going to be charged with a felony, and that would stay on her record." And the lady said that you really have to come down here and get her this time. So I did go down there. And they helped. I think it's hard. I didn't know how much that judge back home loved me until I was in that place with Buttercup, to know how much those officers loved us as a family. To not write that thing down in that book, and to know that and they already knew that I had moved out of the house, not because I tell people, but because they know. They're close enough to us that they know what's going on. And just a few, not everybody. So that was a hard thing in the beginning of this thing, because you're kind of ashamed of your alcoholic, because they embarrass you, do things that they wouldn't do when they're sober. Again, they're not a bad person, they're a sick person. But that shame that I felt early on, years ago, that was false evidence appearing real. That was fear, FEAR. And I had to learn that it was okay, that there were people out there that I could trust. And I did find those people in the rooms of Al-Anon and AA. And I'm so very grateful that, I've never had a sponsor that said I had to leave my life. I've never had a sponsor that told me something that they hadn't done themselves. They shared their experience, strength, and hope. They didn't give me advice. They didn't give me opinions. They didn't give me any of those things. They would get down on their knees and they'd pray with me. They would suggest that I pray when I wasn't around them, when I called them with a problem. And that's really the we in the first step. We walk shoulder to shoulder in this program. And it's the same in both rooms. And that in and of itself was the largest thing that I learned after I started working a program, was that our programs had to be separate. Her program had to be hers, and my program needed to be me. There are times that we have conversations about a step or something, but it's never about her program, and she never asked me about my program. That's a mutual respect across the board. And until someone has a program, they're not going to understand that.
Yeah.
So for that new person that you're talking about that might be listening to this at some point in time, in Al-Anon, I love how we say we know your pain and your suffering as few can. In here, you will find that peace that you long for. And you know, I was given love and understanding in the rooms of Al-Anon before I even knew what love and understanding were. It didn't feel very loving for somebody to tell me, Floyd, it's not about her, it's about you. Tell me how you feel. Not what she did, how you feel. And slowly, one day at a time, I learned that I manufacture my own misery. I manufacture my own. I manufacture so much of it, I don't need to go play around in anybody else's misery. That's theirs. I got plenty to deal with on my own. And that's what this program gives me. It gives me that insight into what the problem is and that there is a solution, and the solution's not Floyd. The solution is never me. It's always a humble reliance upon a power greater than myself. And to see the causes and conditions and to turn those things over to God, again, they're not of me to remove. That's my higher power's work. So getting to work with other people, getting to share a message of hope for something that feels so hopeless, that I felt so helpless, and then I found out that there were things that I could do. That I could love without expecting something in return, without it being reciprocated. Because I find that when I love without it being conditional, man, when it comes, it's like 1,000 times better than any other time. And Bill called it being rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, in which we could have scarcely imagined. And it's something that I can't imagine. It's almost like explaining what a rose smells like. You can't explain what a rose smells like. It's unique. It's all into its own. And that's what recovery feels like. So it's really hard to explain. That's the reason I think that we all have such a hard time explaining it. It's really easy to explain the design for living that's outlined in the book. To explain it in a personal context that might touch someone else, well, that's God's job. That's not my job. He's going to take my words and he's going to instill it in somebody's heart the way he wants it instilled. You know, the largest blessing that I've ever been given in sobriety was just at our February birthday night. Squirt, our son, gave us our chips. And when he got up there, he said, my name's Floyd and my parents are alcoholics. And he did it with a smile on his face. And he was laughing. And I remember not too long ago where he was crying and saying, it's just not worth it. I remember him sitting on the back porch and being so disturbed with life because things seemed to be so turned upside down in his world, and they were. And because of the grace and mercy of a loving God, a person who stuck their hand out to Buttercup and said, I'll be your sponsor. And because of my sponsor and the fellowship that grows up in and around you, in both rooms, we get to see the byproduct of that work. It's our son. It's the people that we sponsor and their children. It's getting to work with another person in the fellowship is, the big book calls it indescribably wonderful. It's just so for the newcomer, for the person who's in such despair, feels so much hopelessness, there is recovery. There is hope. The only requirement is that you trust God, clean house, and work with others.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Carolyn is very involved with the Magdalen House, and now you are very involved in the Magdalen House. So can you talk about your journey with that?
So I got involved at the Magdalen House a couple of years ago, and I get to volunteer with family support, or get to volunteer to fix something or do something. I do those things because there's no way to pay back what has happened at Maggie's. So I'll couch it in this kind of setting. Is I get to wake up to a wife that's sober and full of life every morning. And when Buttercup asked me, hey, do you think you can get some guys to help Maggie's move? I said, well, I think I could probably come up with a few. And when the U-Haul truck didn't show up that day at Maggie's house to move, somebody asked the proverbial question, well, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to rent a truck. We're going to rent a truck. So we rented a truck. And we got over to Maggie's and we did a bunch of moving. And, that went on for a couple of days. And then we had the big move in from Redwood to the Magdalen House. And it was me and one other gentleman there putting together a few little last minute items. Someone walked up to me and said, Floyd, you don't have to do that back here at the cottage house. You can do that inside the building. I'm like, no, not today. See, today's a special day. I got to sit out there at that cottage house and watch those ladies walk into that new house, knowing that they were going to be just like Buttercup. That if they could grasp the how of the program, the willingness that I don't know where it comes from. It's a gift from God. That if I'm at that gift of desperation, if I'm at that moment, they're going to pass into a place and come out the other side that's indescribably. Why do I volunteer? Because I've seen the miracles happen. And there's no way that you can pay for something that's life-changing, life-altering. Getting to watch someone recover is that's the best thing in the world that I can ever imagine to be addicted to. Addiction is not something that I can control. I get to watch people that of little or nothing on my part, God sees fit to show me that to have the child walk up to someone and say, my mom is back. To watch Denton and Buttercup sit on the couch and watch a movie, and him laying on her or her laying on him, whichever way it goes. That's not how things work. That's not how things work. So volunteering at the Magdalen House, if I could do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I would. I don't have any problems taking vacation at Maggie's off of my regular job and going down there and helping, because it's a gift. It's a gift that keeps giving long after you stop doing. But to watch people recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's priceless to know that it's not me doing it, that's God doing it, and I'm getting to watch. I don't know how you guys do it all the time. It's a gift, and you get to, that makes every one of y'all little angels. Every volunteer, every employee of Magdalen House, y'all are angels doing some priceless work. To get to be some little small piece of that is single. Short of the day Buttercup and I got married, or the day Squirt was born, it's the single largest event that's ever happened in this Alanonic's life. I get to love today. Y'all shovel it out of Maggie's house by the truckload. Love. So I'll do whatever I can do whenever Maggie's calls or whenever I show up. And I thank y'all for letting me share in this journey.
Well, this was so wonderful. I cried a few times, so I'm sure other people are going to cry too. Such a beautiful, beautiful story. And thank you so much for everything that you do for Maggie's and family members and alcoholics. It's just wonderful.
You're an amazing person, Stephanie.
Thank you. So are you. I'm going to cry again. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have to go pick up my daughter. So
That's
you have
awesome
a wonderful day.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for The Magdalen House.